Opening. The disappearance story. After giving birth, I didn't disappear in the way people usually think. I'm still here. I still wake up every morning. I still breastfeed. I still reply to messages. I still smile when someone asks, being a mother must be so wonderful, right? But something inside me is gone. I look in the mirror and see a woman who is both familiar and strange. My eyes are sunken. My face is tired. A smile is forced out reflexively, without any accompanying emotion. People say I should be grateful for having a healthy child, for having a family, for having fulfilled the duty of a mother. But no one asks me one very simple question. Am I okay? There were nights when the whole family was asleep. I would sit in the darkness, holding my child in my arms, and wonder, who am I, besides being a mother? Why do I feel so empty, even while holding my child? I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't break down in an obvious way. I just quietly disappeared. Disappeared from the very person I used to be. And the scariest thing wasn't the sadness, but the feeling. No one noticed that I was gradually ceasing to exist. What does disappearing mean? When I say I disappeared after giving birth, I don't mean death. Neither did I leave home. I didn't run away from my responsibilities as a mother. I was still there, physically. But the human part of me gradually stopped speaking. Disappearing is when you still do everything others expect of you, but no longer feel alive. You do everything right, but don't know why you have to do it. You exist, but you're not truly present. I take care of my baby every day. I remember feeding times, diaper changes, and putting my baby to sleep. But I don't remember the last time I felt happy. Not overwhelmingly sad, but feeling nothing at all. It's a feeling very difficult to name. Not intense pain, no heart-wrenching tears, just emptiness. You smile when you need to smile. Nod when you need to nod. Respond, I'm fine, with practiced ease. Like you're rehearsing a role, but inside you're completely empty. Disappearing is when you look in the mirror and realize you no longer recognize yourself. Not because your appearance has changed, that's normal after childbirth, but because your eyes are different. No more familiar sparkle, only lingering weariness remains. People often say that motherhood is instinctive, that maternal instinct will come naturally, that you'll know what to do. But no one tells you what it feels like when that instinct doesn't come immediately. When you look at your child and feel nothing but confusion and responsibility. And then guilt begins to creep in. You ask yourself, am I a bad mother? Why can others do it, but I can't? Why do I feel this way when I should be happy? Disappearing is also when you no longer dare to speak your true feelings. Because you're afraid of disappointing others. Afraid of being judged. Afraid of being called weak. Of not appreciating what you have. So you remain silent. You hide your exhaustion with a smile. You hide your emptiness with busyness. You hide your fear by saying you're okay. But your body doesn't lie. You can't sleep, even when you have the chance. You're tired even when you're not doing anything strenuous. You get irritable over small things, then blame yourself for being irritable. Disappearing doesn't happen in a day. It happens gradually, little by little, each day. One day you stop wearing makeup. One day you stop talking about your dreams. One day you no longer remember what you used to like. Until, if someone asks you, who are you? You can only answer with your roles. I am the mother of. I am the wife of. I am the caregiver. But you no longer know what kind of person you are, beyond those roles. And that's when you truly disappear. Not from the world, but from yourself. When happiness becomes pressure, people often say that giving birth is the happiest moment in a woman's life. That when you hold your child in your arms, all pain disappears. That you feel complete, fulfilled, and grateful. But what no one tells you is, happiness, when expected of too much, can become a heavy burden. From the moment you leave the delivery room, you're surrounded by seemingly kind words. Having a child is happiness. Hang in there, it's wonderful. Motherhood is the noblest calling for a woman. No one intends to hurt you. But each of those words, unintentionally, places an expectation on your shoulders. You must be happy, and when you don't feel that way, you begin to doubt yourself. You look at the pictures on social media. Young mothers smile brightly, tidy homes, well-behaved babies in loving arms. No one posts pictures of endless sleepless nights. No one posts moments of crying in the bathroom. No one posts the fear of being alone with their child. But you compare your real life to those carefully selected moments. And you lose from the start. You begin to ask yourself, why am I not as happy as them? Why do I feel exhausted when I should be grateful? Why am I not like a real mother? Happiness, at this point, is no longer a natural emotion. It becomes a test, and you feel yourself slipping away. The pressure doesn't just come from social media. It comes from people very close to you. From family, with advice that goes unasked. From family members, with unintentional comparisons. From statements like, "It was harder for me to give birth to you." You're complaining about just taking care of a child. These words aren't malicious, but they teach you to be silent. You stop sharing your true feelings. You stop saying you're tired. You stop admitting you're not okay. Because, in a world where motherhood is associated with happiness, your sadness becomes illogical. You're afraid that if you speak out, you'll be judged. Afraid of being seen as weak. Afraid of being called unworthy of being a mother. So you try harder, try to smile, try to appear okay, try to be the image of the mother everyone expects. But the harder you try, the more exhausted you become. Happiness is like a mask now. You wear it every day. And each day, you feel yourself drifting a little further away from yourself. The scariest thing isn't that you're unhappy. It's that you no longer allow yourself to be unhappy. You forbid yourself from being sad. You forbid yourself from complaining. You forbid yourself from being weak. And that's what pushes you further away from yourself. Happiness shouldn't be an obligation. It's not something you have to prove to anyone. But when you become a mother, happiness becomes a standard. And so many women quietly break down, not because they don't love their children, but because they can't bear the pressure of always having to appear okay. Postpartum depression, not weakness. When it comes to postpartum depression, many people still have a distorted image. They imagine women who are always crying. They imagine women who don't care for their children. They imagine women who are not strong enough to be mothers. But the truth is, postpartum depression doesn't have a fixed face. It can be a mother who still wakes up early every day, still feeds her baby on time, still fulfills all her responsibilities. But inside, she's exhausted. Postpartum depression is not mental weakness. It is a real psychological and physiological condition that occurs when a woman's body and mind undergo too many changes at once. After childbirth, hormones in the mother's body drop sharply in a very short time. The brain has to adapt to prolonged sleep deprivation. Your body hasn't had time to recover from the pain of childbirth. Meanwhile, the responsibility of motherhood comes immediately. There's no time to prepare. You don't get to practice motherhood step by step. You have to be a mother right away. And in many cases, the mother has to do it almost alone, mentally. Postpartum depression doesn't stem from not loving your child. It stems from struggling for too long without support. Many women think, if I was stronger, I wouldn't be like this. If I were more positive, everything would be all right. But that's a misconception. No one says someone with a broken leg is weak because they can't run. So why is someone with emotional trauma considered not strong enough? Postpartum depression isn't a choice. No one chooses to feel empty. No one chooses to lose connection with themselves. And certainly no one chooses the guilt of looking at a child they still love. What makes postpartum depression dangerous isn't the depression itself. It's the denial. When a mother doesn't dare admit she's having problems. When the family says, it'll pass. When society associates motherhood with an image of always being happy. That silence leaves the woman to suffer in solitude. Some people don't know they're depressed. They only know they're very tired, very irritable, very hard to sleep, and they no longer feel like themselves. They don't need to be judged. They need to be understood. Understand that postpartum depression can happen to anyone, regardless of education, living conditions, or whether or not they were mentally prepared. Understand that seeking help doesn't make you a worse mother. On the contrary, it shows you care enough to protect yourself and your baby. A mentally healthy mother isn't someone who's never sad. She's someone who knows when to stop, when to seek help, and when to be listened to. Postpartum depression doesn't take away your worth. It doesn't define who you are. It's just a phase, and any phase can be overcome if you're not alone. You're not weak because you're struggling. You're just human, and humans have limitations. Signs no one tells you. When talking about postpartum depression, people often mention very obvious signs: frequent crying, prolonged sadness, despair. But the reality is, many women don't realize they're having a problem, simply because the signs they experience aren't what they've heard. Some signs are very subtle, very commonplace, and therefore, very easy to overlook. The first sign is a lack of clear emotions. You're not exactly sad, but you're not happy either. You just feel like you're existing. Things that used to make you feel good, listening to music, eating your favorite food, talking, now seem meaningless. You do things because you need to, not because you want to. The second sign is a constant feeling of guilt, even though you don't know why. Guilt for not being patient enough. Guilt for feeling tired. Guilt for sometimes wanting to be alone, where no one needs me. Even when you do everything right, you still feel like you're not good enough. The third sign is fear of being alone with your child, but not daring to say it. Not because you want to harm your child, but because you fear the immense responsibility. Fear of not doing things right. Fear of not being able to control your emotions. You love your child, but you also fear feeling like you're carrying something beyond your capacity. The next sign is easily irritated by very small things. A cry, a question, an unintentional comment. You react more strongly than usual, and then hate yourself for reacting that way. Not because you're a hot-tempered person, but because you've been exhausted for too long. Some people experience sleep disorders in confusing ways. You're exhausted, but can't sleep. Or you sleep, but wake up even more tired than before. Your body has been on alert for a long time, and it's forgotten how to truly rest. Another less discussed sign is a loss of connection with yourself. You no longer know what you like. You can no longer envision the future. You no longer feel like an independent individual. When someone asks you what you want, you don't know how to answer. You only know what needs to be done for others. Some people aren't sad, but are indifferent to everything. No longer excited, no longer expectant, and they think, maybe that's what motherhood is like. But no, motherhood doesn't mean completely losing your emotions. The final, and most often overlooked, sign is that you think this feeling is normal, and that you have to endure it. You tell yourself, I'll get used to it. Others are struggling more. I can't complain. But the truth is, you don't need to reach your breaking point to say you're not okay. These signs don't make you a bad mother. They just show that you are an overwhelmed person. Recognizing them isn't about labeling yourself. It's about letting you know that you're not imagining this exhaustion. And you're not alone. How I remained silent. I wasn't silent because I was okay. I was silent because I didn't know what to say. From the beginning, I learned that being a mother requires strength. It requires endurance. It requires getting used to it. And when you're not used to it, you think it's your fault. I opened my mouth many times to say I was tired. But then I stopped, because someone once said, it's normal to be tired after having children. I wanted to say that I felt empty. But how could I say that, when everyone believes that having children is happiness? I was afraid. Afraid that if I said it, others wouldn't understand. Afraid of the disappointed looks. Afraid of the quick, concise answers. Don't overthink it. Just hang in there, it will be all right. So I stopped speaking. I started responding, it's okay, fluently. I smiled at the right time. Nodded when necessary. Blurred my fatigue with busyness. I remained silent even with those closest to me. With my family, I didn't want them to worry. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to be reminded that I should be grateful for having children. With my friends, I didn't know where to begin. Everyone had their own life. Everyone was busy, and I wasn't sure they had enough time to listen to a long, heavy story like this. With myself, I pretended that everything would be all right. That it just needed more time. That I just needed to try a little harder. But silence didn't make the fatigue disappear. It only made me feel more alone. There were nights when I sat in the darkness, holding my baby in my arms, and thought, if I disappeared for a few days, would anyone notice? Not because I wanted to leave, but because I wanted to rest. I wanted to stop having to keep going. I wanted someone to see me, not as a mother, but as a person who was exhausted. I convinced myself I wasn't serious enough to need help. I could still take care of my baby. I could still fulfill my responsibilities. But I didn't realize that being active didn't mean I was okay. Silence gradually became a habit. A little bit each day. One day I stopped talking about my feelings. One day I stopped asking anyone for advice. One day I stopped expecting anyone to genuinely ask how I was. Until I realized I no longer knew how to express myself. The most painful thing about silence is not that no one hears, but that you gradually come to believe that your feelings don't matter. But the truth is, silence isn't because I'm weak. Silence is because I've struggled for too long in solitude. And so many other women are silent in the same way as me. No one sees, no one calls my name, but the weariness remains. What made me start to come back? I didn't come back in the way people tell inspirational stories. There was no moment of awakening, no moment of dramatic decision, no day I woke up and everything felt better. My comeback started with something very small. I admitted that I wasn't okay. Not loudly, not to everyone. It was just that, for the first time, I stopped trying to convince myself that everything would be okay if I tried a little harder. I realized I had been trying for too long. The first thing that made me stop was my body. It was so tired I couldn't pretend anymore. Prolonged exhaustion, sleepless nights, mornings that felt like I hadn't rested at all. I realized that if I didn't take care of myself, no one else could. The next step came from a very ordinary moment. Someone asked me, not, is your child well behaved? But, how are you, really? And that time, I didn't answer, I'm fine. I was silent for a few seconds. Then I said a very short sentence. I'm tired. Just one sentence. But it was like opening a door that had been locked for a long time. I didn't pour everything out. I didn't cry. I didn't complain. I just said enough so I wouldn't have to keep holding on. And I realized something important. Saying it out loud didn't make me weaker. It made me lighter. I started allowing myself to accept help. Even small things. Asking someone to watch the child for a while. Sleeping an extra hour. Eating a meal without rushing. These things sound simple, but for someone accustomed to enduring hardship alone, it was a whole relearning process. I also learned to change the way I talked to myself. Instead of, why am I so terrible? I tried saying, I'm trying in a very difficult situation. Not to make excuses, but to be fairer to myself. I realized that, to get back on track, I didn't need to become the old version of myself. I just needed to become a version of myself who was living, not suffering. There were days when I was still tired, still irritable, still feeling overwhelmed. But unlike before, I no longer thought I had to overcome it alone. My comeback wasn't a straight line. It was small steps, some days progressing, some days slowing down. But each step was meaningful. I started to come back when I understood that being a mother doesn't mean disappearing. Loving your child doesn't mean neglecting yourself. And I deserve to be okay. Not because I do my job well, but because I am a human being. A message to those who disappearing. If you're reading this, perhaps you're not here by chance. Perhaps you're very tired. Perhaps you don't know how to name your feelings. Perhaps you just feel like you're slowly disappearing, but you don't understand why, and you don't know who to tell it to. I want you to know one thing first. You're not imagining this weariness. Feeling empty doesn't mean you're ungrateful. Feeling exhausted doesn't mean you're weak. Not being like the happy mother image doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. Many people are like you. They still wake up every day. They still do what needs to be done. They still care for others. It's just, no one else is taking care of them. If you're feeling like you've disappeared, that doesn't mean you've lost your value. It just means you've given too much and haven't received enough support in return. You don't need to hit rock bottom to say you're not okay. You don't need to prove how much pain you're in to deserve help. Just being tired is enough reason. If you can't do the things you used to do today, that doesn't define who you are. It just says you need a break. You don't fail because you need help. On the contrary, recognizing that you need support is a very quiet form of strength. I want you to listen carefully to this. You don't need to disappear for others to be okay. Your existence, with all its emotions, limitations, and needs, doesn't hurt anyone. If you're silent because you're afraid of bothering someone, I hope you know that your feelings aren't a burden. If you're trying to be alone because you think everyone else is, I hope you know that not everyone is okay, it's just that not everyone dares to speak up. You don't need to go back to being the person you used to be. You don't need to be stronger. You don't need to be more positive. You just need to be a living person, not a suffering person. Maybe today, the only thing you can do is to keep breathing, keep staying. And that is enough. If you can, try saying something very small. Not everything, just a little. I'm tired. I need a break. I'm not feeling so well. Just someone to listen. Just a moment to let go of the pressure. You don't have to walk this path alone. And you don't have to disappear to prove you deserve it. You're still here, and that makes sense. In conclusion, if you've stayed this far, I want to tell you something very simple. Thank you for not leaving. Not because this video is good, but because you gave me a few more minutes to listen to myself. You don't need to remember everything you just heard. You don't need to change anything today either. Just know that the feelings you're experiencing, however hard to name, are real. If this video made you feel a little less lonely, you don't need to say anything. Just leave a small sign, a white heart, or a short comment like, "I'm here." Not for someone to see you, but to remind yourself that I still exist. If you know someone who is quietly experiencing something similar to this story, you can share this video with them. No explanation needed, no lengthy message required. Sometimes, simply seeing yourself in someone else's story is a huge uplift. And if you're not ready for any interaction today, that's perfectly fine too. You can turn off the video, take a deep breath, and return to your own rhythm of life, a little slower. You don't have to disappear to be loved, and you don't have to be stronger to deserve to be there. See you in the next story, when you're ready.